Spiders J12 wants to know, how often do you need to weatherize? And by weatherize, they say, they mean make the props fully functional in adverse weather conditions. And when you do, what approaches, industry standards, or custom solutions have you created for weatherized end products? This is a tricky one. I have not done a ton of prop weathering, but when I got a tour of Galaxy's Edge in Orlando last year, it was a real education in what Disney does to make their stuff weatherproof. I mean, most of the objects that you can touch at Disney World are like cast aluminum or cast bronze. Like they are literally indestructible. And that may seem like overkill, but every theater person will tell you that it is astounding what a tiny actress can do to a prop that you have given them. You'll have these small, diminutive actors, and you'll give them some welded steel prop for a show, and they'll come back a couple nights later and they'll be like, sorry, it broke in half. And you'll be like, I don't even know how I could break it in half. How did you break it in half? And I'm like, I don't know. Seriously, it is astounding the level of abuse that theater actors can impart on theater props. So part of it is an iterative process. Is the institutional knowledge is really, you got to like build stuff and it deteriorates, and you got to learn how to work around that. Second of all, I mean, there's a lot of stories like when they were filming Hellboy, and Mike Elizalde and his team at Spectral Motion built the beautiful mecha glove that Rasputin wears that gives birth to Hellboy, brings him from the other dimension. They weren't told that they'd be filming in the rain, and then they got there, and just like Jurassic Park, pouring rain all the time. And Mark Satrakian talked in one interview, I think, about having to weatherize and weatherproof all the motors and the wiring for this, because it was filled with electronics. It is hard to make things weatherproof. It is hard to make them fully functional and weatherproof. It is really not a bad idea to start with considering cast metal as the foundational, like the material that it should be made out of if it really needs to be durable under super adverse conditions. I'm not sure I'm giving a really detailed answer to that. I apologize. It's also, I'm just trying to think. Now, look, outdoors is really toxic. You've got weather, you've got heating and cooling cycles that make things expand and contract. And when they're made of disparate materials, they expand and contract at different rates, and they literally pull themselves apart. Ultraviolet rays are horribly abusive to most materials. They yellow things, they break the polymer chains at the surface, things start to crack, they become brittle, they fall apart, they rot. Which is why you want to go with monolithic, really, really durable and permanent materials. I hope that was useful. ATIN asks, do you have any advice on weathering a chrome prop, such as a prequel lightsaber? So like Count Dooku's lightsaber, which is very chromy. Yeah, there's a few chromy props. Chrome props, try saying that 3 times fast. Chrome props. Chrome props are tough. It's true. You don't want to put too much of an oily finish on them, but they do benefit from dirt in the cracks. They definitely, much of the time, the best weathering is almost invisible. So for like a chrome prop, you might take something like, did we put up my watercolor video of weathering with watercolors yet? We haven't. So I recently have been experimenting with using a little watercolor tray with the little chiclets of watercolor paint. And I've been using that quite thickly to do a very movable kind of weathering. We'll put this video up soon. But what I love about it is you could use that sort of process on a chrome prop to get dirt into the corners. And the thing is you put it around the details, and then you take off as much as you can, and where it sits is where dirt would actually sit for the user of that device. And chrome is incredibly durable. Like, so it's really, really hard to scratch. When I had my Rocketeer backpack, oh, right, I've got to reach out to that friend of mine, Rocketeer. When I had my Rocketeer backpack chrome plated, it arrived and I was so shocked. I was expecting to open this box and be like, oh, like the Ark of the Covenant or like the briefcase from Pulp Fiction. And instead, what I was looking at was the shiniest mirror finished jetpack, and it looked terrible. Like it was way too shiny. And I grabbed some Scotch-Brite. I grabbed this purple Scotch-Brite, the type A, very fine. And I couldn't put a dent in the chrome with this. This was not hard enough. I had to use the gray stuff, which is really, it's hard on your skin, it's stiffer. And I was able to use that in about 2 hours of really hard elbow grease to scratch the chrome. I'm not a big fan of scratching chrome. It's a pain in the ass. But you might try watercolor paints. You might wait till we put up the video of watercolor weathering. But you could also use, you can also use oil paints. Again, anything that you put on with a chrome prop, you'd be looking to pull off as much as possible just to leave it in the corners. And that really tends to make details pop. And it also tends to impart an age to the object, which is very subtle. It's a very subtle kind of aging. It's not like you're making rust spots. It's more like that thing of like the tarnish on the silverware in your drawer, right? Like that's a subtle kind of weathering. Christopher Rees says, are you going to take on bookmaking? I just watched your latest bookmaking history video and found it fascinating. I have done some bookmaking in the past, and I don't mean betting. I have made some books in the past. Back in when was this? I was still on Bartlett Street. Right, it was just after my divorce in early 2002. I built an edition of 10 Indiana Jones Grail diaries. And those diaries are made in what's called signatures. So a signature is, this is a very classic signature, which is 2 large pieces of paper folded in half, making 8 sheets. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And the Raider's diary is made in signatures of, I think it's 3 of these sheets. So it's 12 sheets per signature. And I did the whole thing where I lined up all the signatures. I made saw cuts. I used a needle and thread to sew all the signatures together and bind them in a book whose cover was a worn out leather jacket. And it was super fun. I've also been lately playing around with some of my Leonardo codices replicas. A lot of this is off camera because I've been doing it at my desk at home. It's just a very soothing thing to do in the evenings. But I promise I will bring some of that to the channel because it's deeply satisfying work. Yeah, thank you for the suggestion. You're making me realize that it is totally worth dedicating a full one-day build to making a book and making something really unique. Because it is both very straightforward and understandable. It's not a mysterious process, and it is very much a process in which, like, the quality you can bring as a master would be unparalleled, but what you can get as a beginner is still mighty respectable. And those are really fun skills to play with because you're going to get a result that's satisfying almost no matter what. And I like those techniques. I like those excursions. They are really fun.
Check out the museum.
What's that?
Check out the American.
Oh, yes. Sorry. Check out the subject of the video that you complimented, which is the Museum of Bookbinding here in San Francisco. And actually, this is a great question for you all watching. I love the Museum of Bookbinding. I'm a big fan of small museums in different cities. I'd love to know your favorite small museum in various cities, whether it's San Francisco or where you live. Those small museums are such deep excursions, often into one person's perfect madness. I always feel a connection with the small museum. So yeah, go to the San Francisco Museum of Bookbinding. The equipment they have there is beautiful. The space is beautiful. And the people that run it are also beautiful humans and excellent docents. They've got great stories to tell. And the ingenuity from the early days of the Industrial Revolution, or I guess the middle days of the Industrial Revolution, are quite delightful. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us even further, you can by becoming a tested member. Details are, of course, below, but it includes all sorts of perks, and we're building them all the time. You get advanced Word and behind-the-scenes photos of some of our projects. Questions, you get to ask direct questions during my live streams, and we have some members-only videos, including the Adam real-time series of unbroken, unedited shots of me working here in the shop. They are weirdly meditative. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you on the next one.